I'm going to do something a little different, a little unusual today because I now have a sous vide immersion cooker. I've done one other video with a sous vide cooker. That one belonged to my friend. I borrowed it to do a video. I've got this idea for pork that I've been wanting to do because pork overcooks so easily. My mom used to cook pork chops until they were like leather. They were good, but chew, 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 chew. They were hard. I'm thinking with a sous vide cooker, I can get it cooked just enough so that it's cooked, but still tender. And I'm going to call this one pork chop saltimbocca. I think of saltimbocca as involving prosciutto. It's actually veal with prosciutto, and the name saltimbocca, according to my encyclopedia, my food encyclopedia, it translates from the Italian into literally jump mouth. I think of food that is so good it practically jumps into the mouth. So there's a slice of pork loin. That's my pork chop. I'm leaving the fat on there because I'm on a keto diet, and the more fat the better. Healthier fat is better, like avocado oil or olive oil. And this came in at about 5.5 ounces, 155 grams. This is probably suitable for feeding 2 people. If they eat light, 1 person. If they eat a lot of food, I'm going to sprinkle some salt on there, some pepper, and then I have a sprig of fresh rosemary. I'm just going to put some rosemary needles on there. Kind of distribute those lightly. Okay, and then to keep this hand clean, I'm going to turn it over with the other hand. And the same thing. Sprinkle some salt on there, and then some pepper, and a little more rosemary. I love rosemary on meats, especially like it on lamb. Okay, get that distributed around. And then, as you've seen already, I've got a slice of prosciutto over here. So, I'm going to separate my prosciutto from the plastic. It's a very thin slice of prosciutto. Put that there. I've got a little extra piece of prosciutto there. That'll be for nibbles. And then I'm going to flop this over onto that other piece of plastic. This white, by the way, is parchment paper. I'm going to cover that. Pat that down. That is my prepped pork chop, ready to cook. I'm going to seal the meat in a plastic bag. Now, I have a vacuum sealer, but I'm going to try something different because it's always fun to experiment. What I haven't shown you yet is I have 3 steel ball bearings that I sealed in one corner of the bottom. I have an impulse heat sealer here that I use to seal the bag, put the ball bearings in the corner, then seal the bag again to keep those separate from the meat. And then what I'm going to do is put the meat into the bag. Like so. Okay. And then I'm going to seal this bag again, but I have to get the air out. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. All right, so get the bag on my impulse heat sealer. I bought this impulse heat sealer on Amazon, and I also sell, this is called poly tubing. It's an 8-inch heat sealer and a 6-inch poly tubing, so that it's short enough to fit the sealing element, the heating element. Seal that. Okay, now that's sealed in there, but I want to get this air out. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do that. Now, what do you do if you don't have a vacuum sealer, but you want to get the air out of this bag? I've got a vacuum sealer, as I said, but I like to experiment, try something new. I've got a plastic tube here, and then this is a needle that if you've ever used a bicycle pump, this is the one that fits on the end of the hose, and you use the needle to inflate a basketball or a football. I poked a little hole in this bag, if I can find it, right there. And I'm going to insert the needle into the bag. If I can, there it goes. All right. And then I'm going to use that to suck the air out. Let's see what happens. Oh, and I've got a piece of tape ready to cover that hole when I get the air out. Okay, let's see what happens here. Cover the hole with the tape. There it is. You can spend $150 on a vacuum sealer, or you can just get a piece of hose and an inflation needle and save yourself a lot of money. These are just fun things I like to do just to see how an experiment might work. All right, let's start cooking this. I have my sous vide cooker in a pot of hot tap water. My friend who owns a sous vide said just use hot tap water. It'll reduce the heat up time. Going to see how this goes now between the ball bearings and the air pulled out. That sinks all the way to the bottom. That worked. Okay, I'm going to just hold the plastic up with a clothespin. And then I have to plug in my sous vide cooker. All right, I'm going to do a close-up of my settings. My thermometer says the temperature of that water is about 125 degrees. This is set right now for 135. The last time I tried this, I thought it was a little bit too overdone. So I'm going to set it for 130 degrees. 99, 130. And then for time, I'm going to set it for an hour and 30 minutes or 90 minutes. 30, and then press go. And it'll beep when it tells me the temperature is up high enough. It'll beep 3 times quickly to tell me that it's started cooking and started to count down. And then an hour and a half later, when it's fully done, it'll beep 5 times to tell me my meal is ready. But one thing I want to point out is, I'm going to get close enough. You can barely hear it. It's a really silent cooker. I shouldn't say really silent, but really quiet. While that's cooking, I thought I would say a couple things about the prosciutto. First of all, it's going to give a nice flavor. That's why I use prosciutto in my clam chowder. It's a trick that I learned from an old BBC cooking show, Two Fat Ladies. Second is that prosciutto sears very nicely. So when I go to sear it in the second step, I'll get that nice maillard reaction, that browning that'll give it a nice flavor. 5 beeps means it's done cooking. I have in the meantime been heating a small skillet with safflower oil. I like to use safflower oil for browning because I can heat it up to 500 degrees, over 500 degrees before it starts burning. Just going to sear that for a couple of minutes on each side, and then I'll be ready to plate and have my lunch. There is my pork chop. Look how beautifully seared that is on both sides. See, the prosciutto sears so nicely. And then because I like it so much, I'm going to put some broccoli on my plate. And that is going to be my lunch. I can probably only eat half of that for lunch, so I'll cut it in half. I want to see what it's going to look like inside. See how pink it is inside. Cuts nicely. Little pink inside. This should be perfect. So there is my pork chop saltimbocca. I want to see how tender this is. Did I get it to the right temperature? Yes. That's good. That's really good. And see, the prosciutto gives it a little bit more flavor. I can taste the pork, but pork is kind of a mild flavored meat. The prosciutto ramps it up a little bit. So excuse me, I'm going to go enjoy my lunch of my pork chop saltimbocca.